You've seen Vikings portrayed in films and on TV, yet common representations of this historical society lean more toward fiction than fact. A typical Viking male would farm during daylight hours, with his spouse managing the home and children. Come nightfall, the entire family slept together in a single chamber, likely alongside their goats, probably not the image most conjure when thinking of Vikings. In this piece, we'll explore the unusual elements of daily existence in historical Viking society. Viking society was exceptionally harsh. Pillaging enemies was something they relished. The rewards from such raids included captives who were transported back to Scandinavia for sale as slaves, referred to as thralls. Norse warriors would navigate around Europe, attacking territories from Spain through Byzantium. During these expeditions, they trafficked captives, especially females, through an extensive slavery system. Archaeological findings have revealed many iron collars used for slaves, and even indicated forced labor plantation sites in Sweden. If that isn't frightening enough, human sacrifice was also prominent in their culture. Massive grave sites discovered throughout Scandinavia appear to confirm reports from Christian chroniclers who documented atrocities performed as religious offerings to deities. Little wonder everyone lived in terror of Viking attacks. Though the horned Viking helmet is merely folklore, the famous Viking funeral ceremony actually occurred. Distinguished warriors would have their remains positioned on a vessel ranging from a small rowboat to an enormous warship. The vessel would be filled with grave goods, essential possessions the departed would require in the next world. Such possessions could include precious items, creatures, armaments, and most disturbingly, living thralls owned by the deceased. After being loaded, the vessel, likely remaining on shore, would be ignited, dispatching the warrior in a spectacular fiery display. Though primarily men received this distinction, it's significant that numerous women were honored this way too. During the 10th century, an author named Ahmed ibn Fadlan observed a funeral resembling these ship ceremonies. His writings described how among wealthy individuals, one-third of their riches went to their relatives. Another portion covered their burial garments. The remaining portion purchased alcoholic beverages served during the cremation, quite the Viking funeral celebration. You likely already know this, but Scandinavia experiences severe cold in winter months. This freezes the terrain and complicates travel. Yet when daily survival depends on hunting, as it frequently did for Vikings, frozen ground couldn't stop them. So how did Vikings manage? Archaeologists believe they simply glided across frozen surfaces. This theory is supported by more than 100 pinewood skis discovered preserved in wetlands. Research also indicates Vikings utilized ice skates fashioned from moose or horse bones. Wooden sleds have been uncovered in burial sites of high-ranking Viking females. Vikings aren't particularly remembered for their hairstyles. There may be good reason for that. Specifically, Vikings wore inverted mullets. Indeed, upon their initial arrival in England, residents immediately noticed the front-parted, back-business hairstyle these newcomers displayed. The hairstyle became quite unpopular, especially among clergy. It would resurface in later generations worn by Norman conquerors who descended from Vikings. Viking dwellings consisted of just one large chamber. A Viking household typically shared their living area with their livestock, though some structures were constructed with dual rooms, presumably to prevent inhabitants from being trampled by goats during sleep. These typically belonged to more affluent community members. As time progressed and Viking civilization advanced, prosperous Vikings acquired progressively larger residences with additional space. Such homes could adequately house the inhabitants, animals, and provisions that required shelter. The biggest chamber in these buildings was termed the longhouse. It usually contained a fireplace and a cooking area and functioned as a gathering hall. Viking females could become leaders or formidable warriors, though most didn't. With the average Viking male occupied with farm labor throughout the day, the typical female was responsible for managing her home, which meant maintaining food supplies, textile work, sail repair, and essentially running the family. Viking females faced difficult lives. A spouse's infidelity was regarded as an extremely grave offense. In certain regions, a Viking male who discovered his spouse's unfaithfulness could be legally permitted to kill both his spouse and her paramour. By contrast, males were allowed to maintain concubines or father children beyond their marriage, a custom so common that some early Christian witnesses incorrectly assumed Vikings practiced polygamy. Nevertheless, females possessed certain protections. Viking females were permitted to divorce their spouses through a surprisingly straightforward legal mechanism. Historical records indicate this rarely employed process simply required assembling a group of observers and proclaiming oneself divorced. Though it could become more complex when property ownership was a factor, its simple existence is quite noteworthy. For entertainment, Viking males and females participated in a game called H-Nefatafel. H-Nefatafel was an intense strategy game, similar to chess, believed to have developed from an older Roman game. They also played standard chess. The British Museum possesses a renowned 12th century Norwegian chess collection called the Lewis Chessmen, featuring pieces carved from walrus tusk and whale tooth. It represents one of the rare, almost complete medieval chess collections existing today. H-Nefatafel holds such significance in Viking culture and heritage that it frequently appeared in Norse sagas played by legendary figures and monarchs. For instance, the saga of King Olaf, the Holy Man. This narrative recounts a game between two actual historical individuals, Sinuth the Great, who ruled England, Norway, and Denmark, and one of his vassals. Vikings weren't without literacy. Actually, they could write utilizing a runic script called Futhark. Used by both males and females, Futhark consisted of 24 characters and could write multiple Germanic tongues. Fascinatingly, Futhark runes have been discovered etched into stones across northern Europe. Archaeologists suspect this tradition may have held spiritual significance. Like every culture, Vikings enjoyed hearing narratives. They even employed professional storytellers called skalds. Similar to the oral tradition keepers of ancient Greece, skalds would commit lengthy tales to memory and perform them orally beside the fire or within a hall. These narratives were entertaining and pleasurable, yet they also functioned to teach younger generations about Viking traditions, beliefs, and heritage. Skalds were particularly associated with royal households. In such environments, it's thought they recited stories glorifying their rulers by connecting them to legendary ancestries. An ancient Norse text known as the Skaldadal preserves the identities of 300 such skalds from the era, spanning 812 through 1200 AD. Their compositions were filled with literary constructions called kennings. Kennings are compact expressions that provided required imagery while preventing the performer from repetition. For instance, rather than stating death, the performer might reference the slumber of the blade. As a fascinating aside, a 13th century Icelandic intellectual named Snorri Sturluson composed a guidebook designed to teach his audience the interpretations of these skaldic kennings. Because comprehending many kennings demanded knowledge of Norse legends, Snorri documented the legends as well. Most of our current understanding of Norse mythology survived exclusively because of Snorri's documentation. Historical records demonstrate that all Vikings, essentially irrespective of class status, maintained a protein-rich diet. Indeed, throughout the Middle Ages, even the most impoverished Viking consumed better than typical English peasants. A standard Viking household would consume food twice daily, first upon waking and then following the completion of work. Meat regularly appeared in their meals, featuring goat, reindeer, elk, lamb, beef, mutton, horse, and owing to the remarkable abilities of Viking hunters, occasionally bear. Swine were raised on homesteads and estates equally. Pork proved especially favored. Most meat preparations Vikings consumed were boiled. One dish called scouse is documented as a substantial stew, served with bread made from beans, grains, and tree bark. For a seafaring population, it's unsurprising that fish also constituted a primary dietary component. Herring was extensively eaten and could be prepared through various methods, including pickling, drying, salting, or smoking. Yet the Viking diet extended beyond just meat. In reality, it was reasonably balanced and featured both fruits and vegetables. Historical evidence confirms they consumed carrots, beans, cabbage, and apples. They were additionally recognized for utilizing herbs and seasonings like cumin, mustard, coriander, and horseradish to enhance plain food. Despite their robust diet, Vikings still encountered certain health issues. For starters, archaeological excavations of Viking sewage systems and waste pits have revealed that many Vikings suffered from intestinal parasites. As though that didn't cause sufficient digestive distress, identical evidence demonstrates that Viking bread was susceptible to being prepared with seeds from weeds poisonous to humans. Currently, we all appreciate quality beer. Yet Vikings preferred a beer precursor called mead, produced by fermenting water, honey, and yeast. It was favored at celebrations and was thought to stimulate exceptional poetry. Mead held such cultural importance that Norse legends actually include a figure called Heidrun, who is an enchanted goat producing mead rather than milk. Vikings enjoyed celebrations. Their feasts were magnificent gatherings overflowing with provisions. A feast would usually occur in an enormous longhouse and be organized by someone prominent, such as the regional chieftain or monarch. The gathering was typically celebrating some event, like a harvest celebration or a spiritual ceremony, though could also mark a private milestone like a marriage, infant birth, or even a victorious raid. Though the provisions at these celebrations were significant, that wasn't the actual purpose. The celebrations were genuinely an occasion to strengthen social connections positively. Rulers and their followers could connect, political positions could be affirmed, and partnerships could be established, all essential to maintaining Viking civilization and culture. How would you manage existence as a Viking? Share your thoughts in the comments section.